Hello everyone and a good belated welcome to another one of my PC build videos. Last time it was a niche HDT PC, so this time I decided I would go back to something a bit more mainstream. And then as it turns out, this is probably the nichest PC I've ever built. Not necessarily due to the rarity or specialization of the parts, but as you'll see, the whole package is a bit unusual. We start off with a good base courtesy of an Intel 12400F, not the absolute latest and greatest, but sharing the same platform which you can upgrade to the 14th gen. This is equivalent to a Ryzen 5 5600, so on its own merits it's a very decent CPU for gaming. The motherboard though is something a bit off the beaten path. A Beef 760 brand new board that I took a calculated gamble on, not really knowing what to expect. But as it turns out, it's a very solid and well put together board with features that punch way above its price class, such as LED debug. Going in, all I wanted was a board that was stable, and on its own that would have made it worthwhile, but amazingly it's more than that, it is actually competitive with some of the lower offerings from the main players. I even got a 32GB kit of DDR4 3200 1.2 volts memory tuned to CL18 with no effort, and even managed CL15 as an experiment. Would I opt to put a higher end i7 or an i9 on this board? Of course not. But that is simply not the point of it. And by now I think you kinda guessed where this whole thing is going, courtesy of the Supremacy Evo water block. Technically the block itself costs as much as the board and half of the CPU, so in normal conditions this would make absolutely no sense. But as I got that as part of a bundle, I can afford to be a bit silly. At this point I decided to become extremely ambitious with the case and opted for a box standard MSI one that normally would be way too cramped for a full custom water cooling loop, but I still wanted to try to squeeze everything in. You see, the grand prize is a PC that is so quiet you can put it in your nightstand and with the footprint to actually fit. But wait, because the insanity doesn't really end here, as I went for not one but two radiators, an X-Flow triple fan one at the front and a double thickness double fan one at the top, both brand new and utilizing Corsair's excellent ARGB fans that are hub linked. And now I think it started to become clear why I mentioned in the beginning that this is a niche PC. For the pump I am installing a PWM D5 atop a heat killer tube. So anyone with Google can clearly see that the water cooling parts are definitely more expensive than the rest of the PC. So what gives? Well, this is why. For the GPU I'm using a 2080 Ti with a water block from EK. Hopefully now starts to make a bit more sense. I wanted to create a PC that is exclusively dedicated to gaming. Sure, you can edit, stream and do everything else you want, but it's not that efficient. What it excels at is 1440p silent gaming. The 2080 Ti isn't an ultra high-end beast these days, but it compares well to today's mid-range, beating the 4060 Ti in a lot of scenarios and outperforming a 3070 across the board by flexing its 11GB of VRAM. Even more impressively, this card comes from an era before power consumption went stratospheric. My original 2080 Ti that I bought at launch was a triple fan dual slot card, and that was the upgraded OC version, as the base one only had a dual fan, a configuration that is mostly dead these days except for the most budget of budget cards. And just to give you an idea of how silly quiet this PC is, I had to swap its PSU for one with the fan stop option because the PSU was by far and away the loudest thing in the whole system. Even more impressively, I actually captured the audio directly on this PC without employing my fanless Surface tablet for the job, so you can see it doesn't even interfere with the microphone. I didn't capture all the pipework on camera, but here's the end result with UV blue coolant. Yes, I know, it's been a hot minute since UV was the must-have in PC, but I think I did a pretty good job of disguising the lamps as much as possible so it's not obvious, and it just looks like the coolant is glowing while not taking anything away from the ARGB-ness of the fans. And that is it for the build portion of this video. And now on to the benchmarks to see what this PC is actually capable of doing. Kicking off with Heaven, and I wanted to make sure that by using Shadowplay I won't impact the frame rates too much, and yes, indeed it's in line with the 3000 series GPU, so I decided to go ahead and use it instead of my craptastic capture card. So literally I can contradict myself already, this PC is okay for streaming. The 2080 Ti is a card I know very well, as I bought one brand new for 1287 delivered, and like a muppet promptly sold it before the GPU shortage for less than half of what I paid for. In terms of performance, it's basically the same as a 3070 Ti for roster and matches a vanilla 3070 for RT. Remember that between the 2000 and 3000 series the RT performance went sky high, so in essence this is a 3070 Ti with more VRAM. And just to prove that point, this 2080 Ti posted the exact same 183 FPS at 1440p in heaven as the last 3070 Ti that I tested. I used Speedway to stress test this card and see what the actual worst case temperatures it got to were, and after doing my best to heat it up, I only ever managed to get a measly 56C with the pump still only at about 45% speed. The hotspot did go up to 73C, which is okay when it comes to the delta between the core and hotspot, if a bit on the higher end. If it was an air-cooled card, I would consider taking the part and replacing the thermal paste, but in this case it simply is not necessary. Rocket League is the first esports game we will be looking at today, and I even turned on the bots to make sure that the CPU is as encumbered as possible. The good news is that we are averaging way above 300 FPS at 1440p while the PC is inaudible, so all good. Unsurprisingly, Fortnite was way more comfortable with the CPU than a Threadripper, go figure. And we are averaging 63 FPS without recording and 58 while recording, which is bang on where I would expect to be for this game with a 2080 Ti. Horizon Zero Dawn really likes this 12th gen Intel CPU as it posted a remarkably high result of 122 FPS, which is, I would wager, CPU limited. The reason I know that is because I got 123 FPS on average when setting the DLSS to ultra performance, but that was by mistake. The reason I say remarkable is because the Ryzen 5 5600X only gets about 110 FPS when paired with the 3070. Horizon Forbidden West, on the other hand, is a completely different kettle of fish, with it only getting about 68 FPS on average and 70 without Shadowplay. But here we can really see the technical progress between the two games that were released about 5 years apart. Don't forget though that here DLSS is set to quality as usual, so even going down to balance will propel those frame rates if you are playing on high refresh rate monitor. So I finally got Assassin's Creed Mirage. Unlike Valhalla, I did not buy it specifically for the benchmarks, I actually bought it because I want to play it, and I would recommend anyone interested to give it a go. It is truly a return to form for the series. Unfortunately though, the Anvil engine hasn't really changed from Valhalla, so it makes sense to expect the same sort of drawbacks. Regardless, at 91 FPS this plays very well. I made the mistake of clicking continue in the main menu and ended up not coming back to run the benchmark for about 2 hours. Control is for me, like for a lot of other people, the first proper RT game. When it came out it was essentially a long ray tracing tech demo, and honestly it worked because I was blown away. It was the first time I felt that my 2080 Ti wasn't just a double priced 1080 Ti without a significant advantage. Seeing the reflections and the environment made me absolutely love the game, and considering that it is from the same era as the GPU, you would expect solid performance, and it delivers with around 85 FPS, but unfortunately the devs never updated Control to take advantage of the newer DLSS features, so it's kinda stuck with a sort of DLSS 2.0 light. Farcry 6 is that's bottlenecked by the CPU as per usual. This game engine is even worse than Anvil. It's actually great at the low end, providing you with the opportunity to experience this game even on a potato, but the moment you go a little bit on market, well, it's less so. Still, 82 FPS on average is an enjoyable experience. And finally Cyberpunk at Ultra Ray Tracing. Here we see some impressive visuals with everything set as high as it will go, but personally I would dial it back just a tick to make sure we hit 60 FPS on average in all occasions. It does become a bit apparent that the RT implementation in this card is definitely Gen 1.0, as even the vanilla 3070 with the same settings does return 52 FPS versus the 47 FPS on offer from the previous top dog. But then again, the tables do turn around instantly if the RT features are dialed back just a bit too high. And that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and see you in the next one.